It's Hughezy Hello and welcome to the last ever episode of It's Hughezy Hello. I've had a great time doing it and I think that with this one we're going out on a high, so what better way to end it, eh? But it's going to be good, so get ready. Today we've got my old friend Paul returning to the show. We're debating Radiohead, so you know the party's going to start early. Then we've got the absolutely hilarious Mark Norman coming on. Always funny, even though he was hungover. But he was great. So we've got Mark Norman, and then on top of that, we've got the absolute living legend, Eric Bischoff, coming on. Now, Eric Bischoff is on talking about original plans for the NWO Wolfpac, talking about Scott Steiner versus Hulk Hogan, and he adds a new member to the NWO. I wonder who it could be. But first, plugs. Do not forget that this show has a Patreon. There's a lot of exclusive content that goes up there early. Goes up there uncut, it goes up there unedited. So if you want to hear the entire uncensored audio from any of these interviews that have been done over the run of this show, that's where you go. You go to Patreon. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the other Creative Control shows on iTunes, such as Oh What a Rush with Animal. Don't forget that there is Wrestling with Regret, hosted by John Wangdon, which has just recently gone fairly viral with a great interview with PCO. Upcoming Jeff Jarrett and Nick Aldis interviews. And if you want to have an awkward laugh, check out the latest episode of World Through My Eyes by David Radigan, where it kind of seems like he had a comedy character on and he didn't realise that he was talking to a comedy character. Either way, it's a brilliant listen. Check out David Radigan. And don't forget, of course, to follow the Creative Control podcast hosted by Bossman Joe Feeney. He recently just had the great Eric Bischoff on himself. My interview's better, but of course I would say that because I have a giant ego. And not only that, don't forget to subscribe to the Keeping It 100 official YouTube page. That's right, it's official, with classic and new clips being uploaded daily, Monday to Thursday. That's where you can go. That's where you can actually get in contact with Conan and Disco Inferno. And one last plug. Don't forget that if you're watching this on YouTube, to go check out the uncensored, unedited iTunes version, where there will be links down below. And don't forget that if you listen to this through iTunes, go check out the YouTube version, because that is where you can actually see how stupid my face is when I'm talking to these people. Thank you for listening. That's the end of the plugs. Okay, up first, Paul, talking Radiohead. Paul, hello. Paul, thanks for coming back on the podcast here.
Thanks for having me.
All the lads back together again.
Yeah.
Ready to party like only we can.
Ready to party like Tom York in his underpants.
There ain't no party like a Radiohead party, because a Radiohead party really happens.
Indeed.
What's your level of Radiohead fandom?
I don't really like any of the newer material. To be honest, I'm more of a sort of the bands, OK Computer, wee bit of Hail to the Thief, a couple of. I dabble in the other ones. Like I'm not really, didn't really get into their more recent albums, to be honest.
See, I'm in this weird thing where I love them to death so much, but at one point I just stopped caring.
Which point was that?
See, when In Rainbows was coming out.
Yeah.
And then there was all this stuff about how you could get it for free and download it off or stream it from their website and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, it was just like, can you not just put the songs out? You know, it just came across as really pretentious, and I thought, I don't need them.
Well, I think that's maybe that's what some people's problem with them is, isn't it? They just thought they're a bit up themselves, but the music's great. You know, the on the whole, that they're fantastic.
But the thing is as well, is that while I do love Radiohead, I would consider them to be one of the most overrated bands ever.
Okay.
Because like every album seems to get 19 stars out of 10.
Sure, yeah.
Not every song is.
You know, it's not really that. It's not their best album, but a lot of people seem to think because it was so different to their previous work. I guess people just lost their minds, like.
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah, I think for me with Kid A, it was so hyped up, and then it really wasn't that different.
yeah,
Like they made it out to be like it was like, oh, it's revolutionized music as you would know it, and then it's like no, they just use a lot of drum machines.
yeah, sure, yeah,
Like the Prodigy do that all the time, too much these days.
yeah, shit, yeah.
So we bounce straight in like a couple of lads right into number 5.
Let's bounce in, yeah.
What have you got there at number 5?
Number 5, from Hail to the Thief. It's the first track. 2 + 2 = 5.
Ah,
It's a nice one to start the album. It kind of creeps up on you. That album. There's some really great songs on it. Like this is the first track on it, and it just I just love the way it kind of starts real slow, and then like a minute or so into it, it just real bang. It just goes into Tom York being proper crazy, yelpy, angry Tom, and we all, and it's just great. Like it's just cause you haven't been paying attention, just kicks ass that bit. Like, and I guess that album was like kind of they tried to crack that it wasn't like a political statement, but it was kind of about the Iraq War and George Bush and all that jazz. Like, but yeah, great song.
that's one of the things that Radiohead. What I did love about them is that they did make albums, or their albums seem like really epic deals, where the opening song was always like amazing, where you put it on and you would think, oh God, here we'll go.
Yeah, they're good at opening an album, aren't they? Like, three of my 5 songs are the first song on an album. Here, so
I remember when Kid A came out, and there was no singles from it, and there was no like music videos or clips. So basically, you had to buy the album to hear any of it.
yeah.
I remember going and getting it after school or whatever, and putting it in the CD place, and you just get the intro keyboard chords to everything in its right place, and you just sit back and you go, "Oh wow!"
Yeah. Nice.
Speaking of Kid A, I'm gonna go in at number 5 with my favorite song. With my number 5 favorite song, and it's from Kid A, "Optimistic."
Okay, nice one.
Which is probably their most, Radiohead's not really known for their sense of humor, but this is without a doubt their funniest song title.
Oh yeah, okay.
And the thing is because it is, the song is very uplifting. A you can do it kind of go thing.
Yeah.
But the lyrics are all over the place because he's singing like big fish eat the little one, big fish it killed all the animals or something sexy.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. Well, I think Tom York did a lot. He did does a lot of that. Like he doesn't want people to second guess him, so he always like kind of he's talking about something, but he writes like gibberish in it as well. So he wants to maintain like a kind of mystique, but it doesn't work sometimes for me. I'm not a big fan of his lyrics, like really.
But this is the thing though about like this song "Optimistic." Like it's on Kid A, and Kid A is supposed to be this brand new direction for them, but it just sounds like anything off the Bends or OK Computer.
Yeah. Which isn't a bad thing, really. Like, but yeah.
What have you got at number 4?
Number 4 is from OK Computer. It's the first track, Airbag. Great song. You've got that look in your eye and close your mouth. Yeah, this one's real nice glitchy drums, kind of weird like time signature to the track. Just love the feeling of it. Kind of really sets the tone for the rest of the album, I think.
Yeah.
Nice guitars and stuff. Yeah, great.
Well, for number 4, I'm gonna go from with OK Computer, Airbag.
Okay.
It's the opening.
Really?
Yeah, I really like the glitchy drum.
Yeah.
You know, but it's again like much like we were saying, like it's just it's this opening. It's like the opening when you put in OK Computer, and this is just when you know where you're like, okay, it's business time with the lads.
Indeed, yeah. Yeah, it kicks ass, like.
And but that other lead guitarist is Johnny Greenwood.
Johnny Greenwood, yeah.
Like, he's a real virtuoso with
He is.
his guitar solo in this is don't even call it, well, don't even what how you would call it, but well, good. I would say it's good.
Good, yeah, yeah. It's not it's not it's not like a generic solo. It's like just it's magic,
Like,
otherworldly. I don't know.
pulling the flaps of those guitar strings.
Putting some flange. No, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
That's a guitar effect, flange.
He's right up the gusset.
Yeah.
What are you going to bang in there at number 3?
Number 3, from OK Computer as well. Karma Police.
Brilliant.
It's a big one. I haven't written anything else apart from Anthem in this one, because that's what it is, baby. It just kicks ass, doesn't it? Like I think if you ask most people that are even fair weather Radiohead fans, they'll probably say, yeah, this is a great song. You have to admit, like, just even watching them at Glasgow last summer, was it? They played this, and it was just like, yes, everything's all right, you know.
all right. Yes.
Just the always remember the video as well. You know, the car chasing the guy in his pants.
Yeah.
Turns around and Tom York's sitting in the back seat, depressed. But it's so good, like, great.
Do you would you say that Karma Police is maybe their most well-known song apart from Creep?
Yeah, you could. I'd have to maybe agree there. Yeah,
I think so.
One of, yeah.
Well, at number 3, I'm going to have to give a whack to How to Disappear Completely from Kid A.
Whoa.
Which, and this is another one. Kid A, it's supposed to be this whole like electronic new thing, but this is like an acoustic ballad with an orchestra and all playing in it.
Yeah, beautiful.
But the thing, it's one of these weird things where like musically it's brilliant, but lyrically it's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Because when you hear Tom York apparently wrote this after playing a gig at I think it was the RDS in Dublin, like some big massive 30,000-40,000 people gig.
Mm-hmm.
And he's all like, you know, you're playing to these large crowds and you feel nothing. You don't feel any interaction. And it's like, oh, poor Tom York.
Yeah, I know.
Like, you know, you could just not do the gigs and retire.
Indeed.
But instead it's like, oh, no, I want to have a unicorn in my back garden.
I know, it's a nice song. That very nice.
And it's just like it's one of the things that annoys me about Kid A. It's that it's just not different enough for it to be getting all this praise.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, it's definitely, certainly for me, it's not one of their best albums. Like, it's not overly, as you said earlier, it's not overly out there either. You know, people losing their minds, but a lot of the songs wouldn't be out of place on.
What have you got at number 2?
Number 2 is from OK Computer as well. Subterranean Homesick Alien.
Ah, yes.
This is a nice one. Very, very nice song. Calm. Makes me feel real calm when I hear this. It's just lovely. I love the guitar in it. Like, real, like, kind of dreamy, lovely chord structure. And then the Don't Forget About Wee Tom as well. They let him have like as wee moany uptight bit in it as well. Like, yeah, it's really great. Just love it. Love this track. Again, not fussed on the lyrics, but all the music's great. Flow's nice. Pure beaut.
See, I love Metallica as well.
Yeah.
Metallica and Radiohead have this problem where they have these great songs as long as you don't really focus on what the lyrics are saying.
Yeah.
That's what makes you go like
So you think Metallica have shit lyrics as well? Yeah, I'm not a big. I wouldn't be a Metallica fan. Like,
That's the thing, is like musically, I think Metallica might be the greatest band alive.
okay,
Because like they're an amazing guitar player, an amazing bass player, an amazing drummer. But then you hear like the lyrics of like "darkness imprisoning me," all I see. And then you see their houses, they live in mansions and stuff.
yeah,
And it's like, what darkness? Shut up. At number two,
cut out there. Sorry, I don't know. Say the last thing you said there. You put. I just the feed cut out, and then I seen you pointing at the screen, like you were saying something important.
no, I said at number two.
Okay. Right, go ahead.
But at number two, I'm going with. Although I did say that "Hail to the Chief" was "Hail to the Thief" was my last Radiohead album.
Although that's where they got the title from, "Hail to the Chief," wasn't it? Because
Yeah.
George Bush used to play that at his rallies or some shit as like a song, I guess, and they changed it up. Those Radiohead scamps.
Well, I'm going with Codex from the King of Limbs.
Nice.
Now, I've never heard the King of Limbs at all. And this one song, and I couldn't tell you one Radiohead song apart from this after "Hail to the Thief." But they used this at the end of the last episode of Westworld.
Right. Yeah.
Do you see Westworld?
Never seen it. No, I heard it was good.
Well, it's not good. It's very overrated. A bit like
really? Okay.
But yeah, but no, but it's basically when there's a big twist at the end of season two, and you find out that not only is everything gone to heck, it's been going this way.
Whoa, what's the swears there?
Yeah, well, I've had a couple of Percy pigs today. I don't really give a horse's flip. But yeah, and then so you're realizing all this stuff, and they're showing you all these clips that taken out of context are now, I should say, shown in this twist context that this person double crossed this one, and this person was a machine the whole time while this music's playing, and you just think, oh, bravo, very good, very atmospheric, very genius.
So it works. It works well.
Yeah, and then the way the trumpet plays, it reminds you of like a rainy early day Christmas shopping, of like where it's pissing down and people are trying to stay in the mood, but it's like 6 degrees and raining heavy, but the good Samaritans are out trying to raise the money for the bastards.
I'll have to listen to that. I have to admit, I'm not familiar with that track, so I will listen to it.
It's a brilliant song. I bet cool. You probably heard it. You probably know it to hear it.
Yeah. How many albums have Radiohead got? Like 13 or not even 10 or something? Is it? Loads.
I think they got 7.
Oh really?
Hang on, let me see.
I don't know. I kind of. Yeah, there's a lot of them I'm not familiar with. I have to admit. And we're on talking about them. And there's some I just don't even know. Like.
So we got the bands: A Moon-Shaped Pool, OK Computer, In Rainbows, Hail to the Thief, Amnesiac, and Kid A.
Pablo Honey.
Oh yes, 8.
8 then, yeah, okay.
Oh, did I say King of Limbs?
Okay, at 9 then.
And did we say okay? Did I say okay?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, okay. Okay, Computer, yeah.
9 albums of struggle and stress.
Have you listened to any Tom York solo stuff? No.
None of it by choice.
He's got some new soundtrack. Sounds pretty good, like Suspirian or something or whatever, for some new film that's out. I think
I might give it a whack when it comes out on video.
Give it a whack, would you?
Whack the arse up. So, what is your number one Radiohead song of all time?
Number one of all time from the bands is Planet Telex.
Oh.
Dun, dun, dun. I picked this one it's my favorite because whenever I had heard, like, I got the bands, the album, and I'd heard like all the singles of it, but I hadn't heard this one. And the first time I heard it, I was like, do you know what? I get it now. Like I heard like Got that real class 90s indie grungy vibe to it, like, and then the chorus, everything is broken. It's just radio. That the thing that was good about Radiohead in their 90s sort of period, like when they were still playing their guitars flat out, just that they had this real sort of simple, understated thing. I don't know, it's hard to describe, like, but like in the choruses, you get Britpop bands that were around, that time that would be real, like shouting it from the rooftops. Radiohead were always kind of understated, but it was still kick ass, powerful stuff, and that's what this song feels like to me.
And Planet Teletext or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
It was the first time that made us realize that, hey, Radiohead, pardon, but the first time made you realize, hey, Radiohead are actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because before that, they were a bunch of nerds, like.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly in the first Pablo Honey, they were pretty geeky, but they're all right. They had their thing going on,
Tom York was fat when they made Pablo Honey.
Yeah.
Very ugly man.
Not like us, of course.
But see, the thing about good-looking people is that we're not well liked.
Indeed.
At number one, my favorite Radiohead song of all time, and it was actually on your list earlier. Karma Police.
Nice.
I just think this song it's just brilliant, and for Radiohead standards, it's weirdly short.
Yeah, it is kind of short, like.
And it's probably one of their best sing-along songs.
Yeah, but it's a total anthem, isn't it?
Would you say this would be Radiohead's most Britpop-y song?
No, nah. It's more. No, I think they have more Britpop-y songs, like from the bands. I think there's definitely a few, like I can't think right now. Like, what's the song with the video? They're in it's like some American diner thing.
Well, that was High and Dry, wasn't it?
High and Dry or something. Yeah, it feels more Britpop-y to me. But yeah, I know what you're getting at, but I don't feel that. It feels more like, Radiohead, their own space.
Which album do you prefer between the Bends and OK Computer?
The Bends, because it was the first one that I got into, and it took me a while to get into OK Computer because I thought there's loads of synthy stuff. That's weird. That's not a guitar, but some of it is guitars, like. But whenever you're 15, 16, you just want to rock, man. I didn't want any of that. I didn't want any of this. A pumping shindig, with all the guys, the lads.
Oh yeah.
It's probably not going to go down too well unless they're as cool as us, which isn't the case a lot of times.
Like, you don't get ready to go out in the stag do and bump a few lines and play some no surprises. Yeah, lads, let's get a here and we'll play exit music from a film.
Fucking right. Get it on there. Yeah. That's the soundtrack to a good night.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Up next, the hilarious Mark Normand. We're going after PC culture. Mark Normand, hello. Okay, so hey, Mark Normand, thanks very much for coming on the podcast there.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. It's I think we can both agree that Google is a big pal of shit.
Yeah, well, I think the international thing kind of made it more difficult. But we're here now, and we're both gay, so let's get cooking.
That's the thing. It's like, so we can watch hardcore porn on the phone, but to talk to someone online, it's too difficult.
Yeah, it's hard to stay in touch, but porn is, click of a finger.
What do you think about his 4K HD ruin porn?
It sounds good to me. I don't know if I've seen it, but 4K is always good, better than 3Ks, if you know what I mean.
You know.
That was a KKK joke.
Oh, I get you. It's just my uncle's always taught not to laugh at anyone making fun of the family business.
There you go.
So, speaking of which, I gotta ask you, as a comedian, do you find that in these insanely PC times that it's the toughest time ever to be a comedian?
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, Lenny Bruce had it harder. He got arrested and thrown in jail for saying. Really, but the people do. It's completely 180'd. So it's a weirder time where now the people are the cops. And it's like, you used to go to colleges to say whatever you want. The kids were the most open-minded. Now the kids are the most closed-minded. So everything is completely 180'd, and it's a strange time.
Do you think, though, that a lot of the outrage is fake, or do you think that
go, this is good, this is bad. If you're inside of this category, you're pure evil, and then they want to like take your job away and get you fired and take money out of your pocket. And to me, that's way more evil. What they're doing, like you just said a joke, and then they want to ruin your life, and they're the hero. I don't get it. I'm always weary of someone who's so quick to punish. What happened to progressive? What happened to open-minded? What happened to forgiveness and all that? And that's all out the window. Now it's just kill them, string them up, burn them at the stake.
And plus, is the entire concept of the joke not supposed to be, hey guys, don't take this seriously, but, and they go, that's racist.
Yeah, exactly. Also, maybe the joke is racist, but that doesn't mean I am. Like, how do you know what's going on in my heart? And that's the thing. They don't care about what your actual intent is. Intent is out. They want to get you in trouble. They want to look like the hero. And that's what it's really all about. It's about with how they're perceived. Look, I shut this guy down. I'm awesome. I'm great. But you didn't actually help anybody. You just hurt somebody.
But have you noticed that nobody ever gets offended until they go home? Like, you don't see people walking down the street going, he said that thing. It's when they go home and they're having.
All right. Yeah, well, they can capitalize on it better later at home because they're in front of their computer and they can get their blog out or their clickbait headline out. So, yeah, like they always show clips of a guy being offensive in a comedy club, but in the clip, everybody's laughing in the room. So it's like, shouldn't you get mad at the audience as well?
Exactly. Well, what's your take on all this stupid Kevin Hart at the minute?
Oh, man, it's wild. I mean, I got a lot of thoughts on this, but yeah, the poor guy tweeted some, I don't know, offensive stuff 10 years ago or 8 years ago. And isn't it good that he's evolved? Like, we all talk about how you got to be a better person and you got to get better. We're trying to change the world and get rid of all this hate and bigotry, which he's done. And now you still want to hold him down to the fire. It's like you should be blowing this guy. He's, no pun intended, but he's changed. He's a better guy. And how come, like, transgender, we're so accepting of someone becoming a man to a woman. Why can't we accept someone becoming a douche to a not douche? That's just a different kind of transition. Why? But they just want to get angry. They want to find something. They have to look through these tweets for days and days and hours, climbing and clawing through all these old tweets just to get some guy popped for something for. And Also, just because he apologizes doesn't mean he doesn't feel the same way. It doesn't make any sense. Sorry, I get fired up.
No, but you're right though. But the thing is, it's like today on my Facebook timeline, or what like on this day in the past, a joke came up that I made where I said, if somebody commits suicide at this time of year by jumping off a building, can they be called Christmas jumpers? But if I told that on stage, people will go, he's making fun of mental health. And it's like, well, yeah, because it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny. And, my whole thing is like rappers and hip hop guys. They say horrific things about killing people, and they call women bitches and hoes and skanks. But for some reason, they never get in trouble, and they're being serious. We're making jokes. They're like talking about their lives. I guess if it has a sick beat behind it, everything's okay. I don't get these rules, None of it. There's no consistency.
Do you ever find it weird how rarely black people call women? It's awkward, but hey.
Yeah, it's a good observation. I think it comes out of the UK and like that whole European area has the
stuff, because I grew up watching so many films and TV shows, because nobody over here says with our accents, we don't say it mother, we usually say mar. It just sounds like we just sound like
right. That's a good line. Oh yeah, that's funny. But good point about the.
Let me ask you a question though, because obviously you do a lot of interviews. But is it tough doing interviews as a comedian, because it's almost like you've got to prepare a set before you go in to do an interview to promote your comedy?
No, I just wing it. I'm hungover right now. I have no pants on. I don't prepare at all. This is just being myself, and it'll probably stick me in the ass eventually when I say the wrong thing and somebody puts me on CNN. But yeah, I just wing it. Well, you got great curtains either way.
Oh, well, they're curtains, but they identify as pullovers.
Nice.
Let me ask you a question. The first time I actually knew what you looked like, because I'd heard you on like Opie and Anthony, Jim and Opie and Jimmy and whatever the they're on Inside Amy Schumer.
Oh yeah.
And Amy seems to be the target for supersonic criticism. So the question I would ask you is, do you think it's she gets that criticism because she's like one of the top comedians in the world, or because people actually don't like her?
I think it's a little. I think it could be both. I think a lot of people hate her, and it's always fun to take down the big dog. Like Ronda Rousey was on top, and then she got knocked out, and everybody loved it. It's fun. It's a fun thing. It's human nature. You lift somebody up, and then you knock them back down. That's just how we roll.
Apart from Jack Nicholson, though, that guy, he's just been on a big fat weight gaining role for like the last 4 decades.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like something lovable about that guy. I don't know what it is. He plays it well. He doesn't stick his head out into the like the mass media world. He just does his own thing. He sits back. He'll be in a movie and then he sits back. You don't see him on TMZ or punching out a paparazzi. He plays it just right. He's got the shades on. He's cool. He gets laid. He's huge in the pants and great movies.
And but the thing about Nicholson, he could literally walk up to a baby and kick it.
Yes.
And people would defend him and go, well, you know what? That baby looked like a little...
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question as well, because I grew up, the idea of getting to watch American talk shows was like, we've got to stay up to 2 a.m, Letterman's showing, Jay Leno's showing. But for me personally, stuff like talk shows and Saturday Night Live, it's the absolute worst they've ever been. So the question I guess I would ask you is that something that plays on your mind, knowing that like you might have to go on the James Corden show, and while that might help you draw a crowd, and his show stinks?
Well, I think, for a guy like me, I'm just trying to get on TV any way I can. I'll be in gay porn if I have to, whatever it takes to get the name out there. But I think that's why shows like Joe Rogan's podcast and other podcasts are so popular, is because it's the only thing on television that's somewhat real and genuine. Everything, you go on Fallon, you're playing ping pong with Kanye. You know what I mean? So like these podcasts and stuff like that, that's the only place you can get a real answer or dive into anything serious and honest. So I mean, comics like me, we got to do the TV when we can. I'm not Trevor Noah over here, so I don't have like a huge fan base. So you got to do anything you can. But these pods are blowing up because it's the only place you can get the truth.
The thing about Jimmy Fallon that pisses me off is that he tries to pretend that we don't know that he was a Trump supporter, and now he's trying to act like, oh, I never liked him. It's like, for me, you can vote for whoever you want because it doesn't affect me. Do you think that Donald Trump jokes are killing comedy? Because for me, I'm bored to death.
Yeah, well, I think there's so many. There's too many, and they're all the same joke. And comedy's supposed to be all originality and your point of view, and it's got to be a new take. So if every joke is you hate this guy, it sucks. Like we already heard that. And what's the difference from your take and this guy's take? If they're the same thing, we don't care. So I'm always an against the grain guy. I like a guy who goes the other way and tells you why he does like Trump or something like that. That would be interesting to me.
Because a lot of the jokes to me are so lazy. Like that fat pig again, James Corden, coming out going, oh, Donald Trump, his hair is weird and he has funny skin. And it's like that's the best you got?
Right. Well, what do you think about these foreign guys coming to America? There you go.
But this is the thing with James Corden, and I'm not like a pro-Trump guy, but James Corden likes to go. He goes, "Oh, Donald Trump has a problem with immigrants." It's like, no, it's illegal immigration. You're there, fat boy, because you legally came to America. That's what he's talking about.
Right. Where did the beef start with Corden?
Man. See, here's what started it off is that I remember someone come into our office and work and they go, "You've got to see this video. It's the funniest thing what James Corden did." And I'm instantly going, "Oh,
yeah."
Like people don't go see her at Wembley Stadium and laugh.
Oh, I see. Well, I think he can't sing. Is that the whole thing? So it's funny because she's good and he's not at singing.
Then I would laugh at Britney Spears. She can't sing either. Only her tits are smaller.
It's a good point. I don't think she's a great singer either. And I guess she does have smaller jugs than Adele. But Adele's tough to beat in the singing and jug department.
No, I meant smaller jugs than James Corden.
Oh, well, that's a given.
I just think that the endless Trump jokes and even jokes about politics to me are just it's played out,
Yeah, I agree. I've never done political comedy. It doesn't interest me. It all changes over time. The jokes have an expiration date if you make them political. So, and everyone else has done it. So I just would rather joke about your girlfriend or your mom or your dad, whatever. Just sex and anal and queefs. Good times.
Yeah, I actually had Jim Florentine on as a guest about a week or two ago.
Yeah.
No matter what I mentioned to him, the conversation turned to anal sex because I'd be like, "So Jim, what did you think of Guns N' Roses?" And he goes, "Axl Rose, he must have."
Pretty good. That's a hell of a. It's either a Florentine or a Stephen Hawking, but I like it.
Ask you this next question as Norm Macdonald, if you like.
Oh, please, my hero, please.
Hey, Mark Norman, do you think that the snowflakes make offensive terms funnier to use?
That wasn't bad. I like it.
But do you think that snowflakes?
Oh. Yeah, I think. Well, my friend Ari Shafir had a good point. He said comedy is dangerous again, which is true because back in the 90s, if you said a racial slur, you might have gotten some trouble. But now, if you say a racial slur, you're like, whoa, this guy's really pushing it. Not saying I want to use a racial slur on anybody, but slurs are funny. So if you use it now, it's almost like a choice. Like, wow, that guy knew this was a big mistake and he still did it. So I think there's something to that. Comedy's exciting again in that way, but it's also annoying because like I got fired from my college agent because I was too dirty at a college gig, and I didn't even say anything wrong. So people are losing work and stuff. So that sucks. But I don't know. I just keep doing the same shit. We'll see what happens.
But I'm not kissing your arse, but yeah, I think you are hilarious, Mark, and you've really got it. Plus, you have abs, which I don't know if that's the best move for a comedian. It's actually quite offensive, but
well, I can suck my own.
Then I'll have abs within 4 days.
There you go. Keep trying, and there's quite a reward at the end.
But the thing about the PC culture today, it's actually making Andrew Dice Clay comedy better from back in the day. Because the fact that he was like, "What are you?"
Yeah, completely. And people forget that he got a lot of death threats, and the feminists were coming after him in the 80s. So not much has changed. It's just that with the internet, you hear these people more, and there's a bigger voice. So he was getting it back then all day long.
Yeah, he was getting pussy.
Yeah, Little Miss Muffet. Oh,
she's a hooer.
There you go.
Speaking of hers, and just as we come to the final question before I let you go put your chargers on and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And this is the big question, and this is what your career relies on, and your whole potential and your future and all this stuff and your fan base.
Yeah.
Here comes the question.
Nicely done.
The Spice Girls are back. Who's your favorite Spice Girl? Are you looking for another great podcast? Well, check out Get a Grip on Life, a podcast interviewing entrepreneurs, social media influencers, content creators, stand-up comedians, industry insiders, and more. Join host Michael Colligan as he finds out what makes these people tick as everyone tries to get a grip on life. Be sure to visit getagriponlife.com for all of their previous episodes, links to social media channels, and more. Or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for Get a Grip on Life. And don't forget to check them out on @GetAGripPodcast on Twitter, and let them know that you were sent here by Hughezy and the Creative Control Network. Thank you. It's worth it. Check it out. Bye-bye. Now, that wasn't an editing mistake. That is actually how the interview ended. Unfortunately, and you'll be shocked to hear this, that at the time of recording that interview with Mark Norman, there was really bad weather here in Ireland. I know what you're thinking, bad weather in Ireland in December. How's that possible? It's shocking news, but true. So sadly, the interview actually cut out where it did, and his phone froze, or the signal went down, whatever. But it was a shame, but that's the way it ended. But how funny is Mark Norman? Up next is Eric Bischoff, the Eric Bischoff. This is great. This is how we end the podcast. This is how we end the whole run of the show. Eric Bischoff. Hello. Eric Bischoff. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I know you reached out to me over the last couple of weeks on Twitter, and I kept telling you I would do it, but my schedule is sometimes not under my control, so happy to finally get here.
You're one of these people that I have no problem waiting as long as it takes, because I would call you one of the few genuinely fascinating people in the world.
Well, that's a hell of a compliment. I hope that we can live up to that expectation and not disappoint your audience.
Trust me, I interviewed Kenny Bullen. If I could get through him, I could definitely talk to you. But yeah, so what I've done is, because as I say, I've been a fan of you for a long time. Actually, you became infamous in my family because when WCW did a UK and Ireland tour back in '93, we loved the way how you would pronounce the way Belfast, Northern Ireland, and we would actually watch it on the TV and be like, he said it.
Well, did I say it wrong?
No, you said it so clearly because over here we didn't even pronounce it. We just say Ireland like that, but you went Belfast, Northern Ireland, and we were like, he said it.
Well, there's a distinction, right? So I try to be exact sometimes.
Well, speaking of exact, what I've tried to do for this is, because I know obviously you've got the podcast with my old friend Conrad, and you've done dozens and probably hundreds of shoot interviews over the years. So I've tried to come up with these topics, questions that you've either not spoken about / rarely spoken about as much.
Great.
Because sometimes, because one of the things I love about you is that you're not fake, and you're not going to put on like a happy, smiley Michael Jackson face for people if you're not in that sort of mood.
That is true. I tend to wear my emotions on my shirt sleeve, which is it's an American saying. I don't know if it exists over in Ireland, but yes, I tend to be pretty easy to read.
Definitely. Well, the first question that I'd love to know is, obviously back in 1998, the Steiners split up, and Scott Steiner was repackaged as this Big Papa Pump, which is a brilliant name, of course, and he was then pushed all the way through 98 to 99 as the next big Killer Hill, and it always seemed to me like they were kind of heading towards a Scott Steiner versus Hulk Hogan feud. So I was wondering, how come we never got that storyline?
Number one, we weren't pushing towards that, although it may have seemed that way from time to time to the audience, but there was never any consideration for a Hulk Hogan Steiner feud. Number one, and if your second question would be, well, why? I think what people who watch wrestling tend to forget is that, your favorite sports entertainer or professional wrestler, whatever you want to call him or her, is a human being, and we're all different. And there's sometimes when there is chemistry between human beings, and chemistry between performers, and chemistry between athletes, and sometimes there's not. And simply putting together two professional wrestlers, in a storyline, because on paper it makes sense without any consideration to how they may gel together or work together based on their chemistry, would be really, it's the reason why casting directors are such an important part of a movie. you can't put any actor in any scene with any other actor, no matter how great the script is. The casting of that movie is just as important as the director in the movie. In fact, the directors in most movies are instrumental in the casting, if not completely control it. So casting when it comes to professional wrestling would be, well, why don't you have this guy wrestle this guy? Even though it makes sense on paper, it doesn't always make sense in execution.
And also, Steiner, and I'm saying this as a fan of Scott Steiner, but it seemed to me like he was one of these wrestlers who took it a little too seriously. And like, why would anybody want to put themselves through that?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I'll dig into Scott Steiner a little bit. You know, he did take himself seriously. He took his business seriously. He took his training, his look, his skill sets in the ring. He took all aspects of, you know, Scott Steiner's approach to the business was very, very disciplined, and he excelled at a very high level in many categories. And to a certain degree, he was a little old school in that regard. And look, he had, you know, as we were just talking about chemistry and personality, you know, Scott had a very, very unique personality, and he didn't get along with everybody. And that may have come off as, you know, taking his business too seriously, but I don't think one can take their business too seriously. I think you've got to manage it. You've got to recognize it when perhaps your personal motivations are maybe not necessarily in alignment with what's best for business. That's always a conflict with any talent, with any performer. But, you know, Scott, you know, I hold Scott's career. I've got some issues with him on a personal level, but in terms of his career, I hold Scott Steiner up there at a pretty high level.
Yeah, he was one of my personal favorites. But another, just another Hogan-related question is it, and this is one I'm sure you've get asked a million times, but a rumor I'd read from one of your personal favorite journalists, Dave Meltzer, Mr. Truth, was that the original plan for Bash at the Beach '99 was the Goldberg versus Hulk Hogan rematch, but Hogan had that changed when he wanted to turn babyface.
No, as is, you know, in most of the situations that we're referring to here, where Dave Meltzer said something about something that happened 20 years ago, there was probably almost 20 years ago, there's probably a grain of truth or a dot or two that one could arguably, with a little bit of imagination, connect and come up with a story, which is what Dave did. Historically, Dave didn't really have any facts. Dave had information that was fed to him by third parties, and most of the time they had an agenda. They either wanted to be in good favor with Dave Meltzer, so that if, in fact, they were a third-party talent who was feeding Dave Meltzer information, oftentimes that information wasn't even remotely close to the truth. Just because it was related to Dave doesn't mean it was truthful. And many times guys would do that because they wanted Dave to write good things about them in the newsletter, because they thought, however, you know, misinformed they were at the time, that would somehow put them in a good political standing internally. In other words, if Dave Meltzer's writing something good about me, then perhaps the people making decisions in WWF or in WCW might look at me more favorably. So I'm going to leak information to Dave Meltzer. That was I think probably more often than not the context of a lot of the bad information that Dave got, including this reference. You know, my issue with Dave is that he never worked to verify it. And if it fit his narrative and gave him something to talk about, made it sound like Dave knew what he was really talking about when nobody else did, he'd go with it. And oftentimes it was just farcical. You know, at the very least, it was farcical.
Well, my personal problem, not personal, but my big problem with Dave Meltzer is that he's been caught out as a liar so many times, again and again and again, yet he still has this army of complete idiot nerds who are like, but Dave Meltzer said it, therefore.
Well, the same could be said for Vince Russo. Vince Russo is a fraud. He has never really come up with anything on his own that made any kind of sense. When he was given any amount of actual autonomy and control, it was an unmitigated disaster. But still, he's got a little band of minions who, for whatever reason, mostly because, they feel like they're getting, close to somebody who is in the wrestling business for a cup of tea, basically, they'll become his little, cult. And Dave Meltzer has his own. Keep in mind, Dave Meltzer's been doing what he's been doing for almost 30 years, perhaps more. And for a long period of time, before digital, before we could do podcasts, before you could send me a message on Twitter and ask me to do an interview, which 20 minutes later we're doing it, and I'm talking to you while you're in Ireland and I'm in Wyoming in the United States. Before all that was possible, the only way that wrestling fans could get any information at all, or in Dave's case, misinformation about what was going on behind the scenes of the wrestling business, were dirt sheets. And of all the dirt sheets that were out there, Dave Meltzer's was prominent and by far and away the biggest, and from his perspective, most successful. So now you've got a couple generations of wrestling fans who feel like they've been bequeathed some inside information and perspective that no one else knows. So when they get together with their buddies, having a couple pints and watching, wrestling, if you're a subscriber to Dave Meltzer, you feel like you know more than everybody else in the room. And that has value. It's the way human beings are. And that's why Dave has such a loyal following. But he's earned it. I may not agree with a lot of the stuff that he's done and may have issues with some of it. Not all of it, but some of it. But he's earned it. He's in a very unique position, and hats off to him for working so hard and for so long to get there.
His fan base are the type of people who would read too much about a film before going to see it. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, this is the one where Bruce Willis is the ghost. We should go see that." And you go, "Oh, well, you just ruined it."
You know what? That's that right there. And now that's not anybody's fault. Again, that's human nature.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's unfortunate, we so quickly, we rush to a judgment about something with so little information. And this is true in politics. It's true in social media. It's so true about everything. We get all of our information now in these short little 20 and 30-second bursts or 140 characters, on Twitter or in social media messaging, on Instagram. That's where so much of our information about life in general comes from. And because of that, we quickly and emotionally, I might add, make a decision without any real information or without, worse yet, even thinking about it. We just make a decision. No thought, just feelings. And I think that's part of the problem with wrestling fans now. And again, it's probably no different. No, I don't follow, football, UK's version of football. I don't follow it here. I'm just not a fan because we call it soccer. It's just not as big of a deal over here as it is overseas. However, I would imagine, just like in the NFL here in the United States, millions and millions, tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars are generated just by people talking about something. They just need something to talk about. And they want to dig into the granular details of everything. That's human nature, and good business. And I think wrestling fans are like that. In the United States, they say the national pastime is baseball. There are millions of just hardcore baseball fanatics that know every statistic. They can tell you who won the third game of the World Series in 1964 and who was pitching and who was playing on first and how many at-bats, a certain, player had. I mean, it's just mindless kind of detail. But that's because they love and they feel passionately about their sport, whatever it may be.
Well, speaking of passion, and there's no denying or hiding the fact that I'm a nerdy, geeky mark, but even at my age, I still today think that the NWO is the greatest gimmick of all time. And even at my age, I'm 33. When me and my buddies are drinking, that's all we either speak about: Goodfellas, Bruce Springsteen, or the NWO.
Well, that's some pretty good company to be hanging out with.
But
I'll take that.
But the thing, but I've got to say though, and this is something we've spoken about. Well, me and my buddies, we talk about how the fact that the NWO gimmick was unfairly criticized because the usual what do you call it, a voice word or whatever that people says, oh, they added too many people and got watered down, and it's like, yeah, well, maybe there was a lot of people in the faction, but a lot of those additions were amazing. When Kurt Hennig joined, that was an unbelievable angle. When the Giant joined, that was great. Scott Steiner, that was a great addition. And I think that the NWO gimmick in general was unfairly criticized. What would you think of that?
I don't know if it's unfair or not because everybody's got their perspective. Here's what, people behind the scenes and a lot of the people that were so critical of the expansion of the NWO, what they didn't know, and what they didn't know was that there was a reason for it and there was a plan for it. And the original intent of adding so many people to the NWO was so that NWO could eventually have its own roster and have its own television show, so that the NWO would be one brand and WCW would be a second brand. That was the reason why we did it. Now, if you don't know that, and you're not a part of those long-term discussions or decisions, then it would be very easy, without any information to make you think, it would be very easy just to feel like, holy crap, it just got too big, too soon, too fast, because, it didn't make any sense to you. It couldn't, because you weren't on the inside. But that's unfortunate. I don't think it's unfair, from a fan's perspective. How they feel is how they feel. I think what's unfortunate, really unfortunate, is that we never really got a chance to execute on that plan. We never got to the point where NWO would have its own show and WCW would have its own show. And that's what's really unfortunate, because had that played out, people may or may not have a different feeling about it, but at least it would have been a manifestation of the original idea and at least made some sense.
But for me, especially with the NWO, because around that time they were on TV, I was big time into hip hop and gangster rap and stuff. Not so much anymore. I'm all about Michael Bublé. But back then, the idea of seeing like 9 to 12 guys walking out looking the same, it's like, no, that's a gang. This is real. That's what. And plus, in storyline world, shouldn't the heels want this crazy advantage over the baby faces?
Yeah, of course they should. But I think, you pointed out one of the compelling characteristics of the NWO. And again, I talked about casting just a little while ago. The NWO is an example of perfect casting. I don't think it could have possibly been cast any better than Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan, the original 3 members, right? Yeah. Each one of them brought something very, very different and powerful to the table. Scott Hall had that very cool, almost Latin kind of vibe to it. And that's a character that he always had. People talk about, the toothpick gimmick, that was Razor Ramon. Scott Hall, when he was the Diamond Stud in WCW before he went to the WWE, WWF, used that toothpick and throwing it in his opponent's face and all that. A lot of the mannerisms of the way Scott carried himself had a very Scarface, if you will, kind of vibe to it, because that was a character that Scott used to model himself into that character. both in WCW and clearly when he got to WWE. So when he brought, remnants of the original Scott Diamond Stud character, and certainly some of that awareness of Scott, a large awareness of Scott in WWF came with him, and he just had that cool factor. Kevin Nash was dangerous. You know what I mean? He was that 7 foot tall, 350 pound, stare death in the eye and kill it kind of a character. He was a badass. And Hulk Hogan, I think, as a heel, probably brought more value because people really hated him when he turned. I mean, his heat was real. Scott and Kevin had kind of cool heat, where Hulk Hogan had real heat. And they were able to balance, the cast balanced itself out nicely, so there was nothing missing between the three of them. And I think it would be really hard to accomplish that today. It really would be. But that's one of the reasons why. And then as the cast grew, here's an important part of that. Conan had a big influence on the NWO. So did X-Pac, by the way. People sometimes underestimate, the value that X-Pac brought to the NWO. He really did bring that vibe. Conan really brought it. That's where you start to see a little bit more of a direct kind of cultural connection between what was going on in the hip-hop world and what was going on in the NWO. With the do-rags, even the music, the way the guys carried themselves, very much was an extension of what was going on in pop culture in the hip-hop world.
Yeah, I loved it. And seeing as it's almost Christmas time, Eric, can I ask you one mild favor?
Sure.
Can you ask me to be an NWO member?
Well, I don't normally step out on a limb without consulting Hulk and Scott and Kevin, but I think nothing could be probably more appropriate at this time because of the quality of this interview and the vast knowledge that you obviously have and your understanding of the history of the NWO and what made it one of the most significant aspects of sports entertainment, professional wrestling in the last 3 decades. It would be an honor to invite you to become a member of the NWO.
Eric, I accept.
All right. It's too bad we can't have a beer. I'm drinking coffee. You're probably having a pint. But maybe someday I'll get to Ireland and we'll do it.
Actually, I'm on a pint of vodka and lemonade here.
Oh wow! You're playing with you're pissing in the tall grass with the big dogs.
Oh no, I've pretty much been drunk every day for 10 days.
Oh God! Well, I've never heard anybody admit to that on an interview, but that's awesome.
Oh no, it's you wouldn't believe what I have to go through every morning. I love it. But just one final NWO question. Obviously, at the end of 90...
I still can't believe you said that now. Really, I've been drunk for 10 days.
Oh, doubt. Yeah, every day. Just I work out in the morning. I frown at everybody in the office, and then as soon as it's home time, I run in for a quick Christmas pint, and then maybe a couple of vodkas when I get home, maybe a whiskey.
Oh, I love Ireland.
And it loves you, Eric. But just one final NWO question. At the end of 98, they did that NWO Wolfpac reunion storyline.
Right.
But then with Hogan getting injured and Scott Hall needing time off and Lex Luger being, I think he got injured too. What actually was the plans for the NWO reunion storyline down the line?
There weren't any real long-term plans. The idea, again, we wanted to build, look, the NWO, we had enough We had enough members in the NWO to have two factions, just to give us some diversity in storytelling, to give us something new to work with. You can't keep telling the same story over and over and over again every week, especially with wrestling that's on 52 weeks a year. It's not like a traditional television series that's on for 8 or 10 episodes, and then they get 6 months off and they come back with 8 or 10 more. You know, we got no downtime. You're telling your stories 52 weeks a year, and you have to change it up. So the idea was to, you know, build the NWO up big enough, and then some of the same principles that drive people to battle. You know, usually it's greed. Almost always it's greed in one way, shape, or form, whether it's in politics or anything else in business. You know, working with somebody. You know, when you have a conflict with somebody, it's usually because it's, when it gets down to it, it's about greed, or jealousy. That's another big one. So we thought, okay, why don't we, you know, once we get it built up, we'll let greed for power and control kind of fracture the NWO so that we can have some internal conflict within our singular group in the NWO. So if, again, at some point we've got our own TV show, our own brand, which we were really potentially only months away from, we've got some ways to craft some new stories, and then, you know, bring them back together long enough just to make it seem like everything's okay. And then when the time was right, you know, kind of pull a thread and watch it unravel, and, you know, they're back to battle again. I mean, that was the overarching approach to that strategy.
Yeah, it's a shame the way it went, but hey, it went the way it went, and that's the way it went, as they say.
That's what they say, indeed. They say it in Ireland with a pint of vodka, and they say it in the U.S. with a cup of coffee.
Well, speaking of drinkers, one of the things I've always got very frustrated at people who criticize you for was the fact that you let Steve Austin go in 94, 95. And I always say to people, who wouldn't have let Stunning Steve Austin go? He wasn't Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Look, I get that a lot. You know, what's really interesting is, you know, if you go back, you know, Steve obviously has his own podcast, and a great one. And if you go back several years ago, I did an interview. Actually, I did not an interview. I did two or three shows in a row with Steve, and we talked about, you know, what actually went down and why he was fired. Steve Austin, in his own words, in his own podcast, told me and his audience that if he were me, he would have fired him too. So I say to all those people who don't really know what they're talking about, who weren't in the decision-making process in the moment that I was in, and who also think that they have some kind of crystal ball that enables them to tell the future, I say to them,
do you think that Booker T got the right push at the wrong time?
You know, it's really interesting you bring that up. I was just thinking about Booker T yesterday. I don't know why. He just popped into my head. And I think Booker T was so ahead of his time. I think Booker T, in retrospect now, because I don't have a crystal ball. You know, I didn't have a crystal ball 20 years ago, and neither did anybody else, by the way. But I think looking back now, if I would have had a crystal ball and I could have looked at it, it would have suggested to me that Booker T really could have been not only an interim champion and not only, you know, the face of the company for, you know, a short period of time, but I think he could have been a much bigger part of WCW history. And by the way, I also believe he could have definitely and should have definitely been a much bigger part of WWE history. Yeah. Because WWE got Booker T not when he was necessarily at his physical prime. I think if you go back and you watch Booker T in 95, 96, 97, 98, he was physically, he was so gifted, such a great athlete. He had a great look. He could do a great interview. He was certainly believable. He had a lot of range. He could be funny. He could be serious. He could be a badass. He could do just about everything. But by the time he got to WCW, he was more mature. He had more confidence in his character, and he didn't rely necessarily. He was still very physical. I'm not taking anything away from his performances in WWE because they were phenomenal. But I think the real growth in Booker T as a talent was once he got on a bigger stage with a bigger variety of people, he had the opportunity to learn more. And he learned very quickly. And I think, Booker T is one talent that I think timing just, it wasn't 100% in his favor. And I'm going to take an example to point out another example of timing. I'll give you two of them. Bill Goldberg and The Rock.
Yeah.
Bill Goldberg came along in WCW when wrestling was on fire. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away from Bill as a character, as an athlete, as a performer, as a professional. I'm taking nothing away from him. But had Bill Goldberg come along 5 years earlier, or 5 years later, or 3 years earlier, or 3 years later than when he did, he would never have become the star that he became as quickly as he did. And I think the same thing is true for The Rock. Had they tried to push Rock as The Rock in 93 and 94 and 95 and 96, when their stuff was just weak, and before they started copying, the NWO era and called it the Attitude Era, if they would have tried all that before Stone Cold Steve Austin was there and before the Attitude Era had kicked into gear, before DX, all of which were manifestations in one way, shape, or form of what we were doing in the NWO 2 years earlier. But had Rock come along way before or way after that, I don't think Rock would have got over to the extent that he did either. A lot has to be said for the people that were there for The Rock to work with, who were already over like crazy. Whether it's Stone Cold Steve Austin or whoever it was with. Triple H. Triple H was a mid-Carter by anybody's real honest assessment, prior to the Attitude Era, prior to DX. Again, a manifestation, a ripoff, if you will, of the NWO era. That was their response to it. Okay? It doesn't matter. Once that happened, Triple H's star really began to rise. Prior to that, he was kind of He was there, he was great, but he wasn't as a character, as a star, very, very, very limited. And when Rock all of a sudden came out of the different, characters that he tried early on and stepped into the Rock character, he got over, but he also got over because he had a lot of people to work with that were over, and more importantly, because the audience was at a fever pitch and they wanted more. Same thing was true with Goldberg. He came into WCW when the audience was at a fever pitch and they wanted more. And both Rock and Goldberg had enough character and enough presence and enough potential to kind of fill that void. Mm-hmm. But had they come along sooner or later and that fever pitch wouldn't have been there quite to the extent that it was, I'm not sure either one of them would be the stars they are today.
Well, and the real sad thing is that guy, The Rock, he really faded into obscurity after he left wrestling.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope he's not homeless.
I think I seen him building a wall earlier over here.
Yeah, I mean, I hope, because I worked with him a little bit. I never really got to know him, but I certainly hope, he's not falling on hard times and struggling to make ends meet. I just haven't heard much about him since he left WWE.
It's his shyness. It's just, it's a horrible, debilitating thing,
Yeah, I agree.
But another thing I've always would love to be able to talk to you about is the Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior feud in '98. Now, a lot of people make fun of that in hindsight, but at the time,
an accurate one too. Look, people can, again, it's the nature of wrestling fans to try to sound like they know more than they really do. Politicians do it. A lot of actors and actresses do it. A lot of people do it. But, if as objectively as one can possibly be, look what we did with Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage in WCW. Yeah. We drew a ton of money by recycling that feud from WWF. Look what we did with Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper in terms of the money that we generated by recycling that former feud from WWF. There's two examples of incredible financial success in the resurrection of two older storylines from the WWF. Why would anyone who's reasonable bet against a Hulk Hogan Warrior scenario, given the success of Hulk Hogan Savage and of Hulk Hogan Piper?
Yeah.
So to your point, but again, that's a context and a perspective that only someone who's thinking and not feeling based on limited information.
Yeah, I if I was able to time travel and between me and you, I would have booked that exact storyline.
Well, I think a lot of people had. And look, it didn't fail because it was a bad idea. It failed because it was poorly executed. It failed because the chemistry was wrong. Again, we're talking about something now we talked earlier in this interview. The chemistry was not right. And it's not that they didn't get along. They did. It's just, when I say chemistry, it's not always, how people treat each other or whether they're friends or not. Sometimes you can have bad chemistry between good friends. Mm. There's a lot of people that I've worked with in the past that I considered great friends and still do. As a performer, though, they don't bring out the best in me, and I don't bring out the best in them. The chemistry isn't there for that. So again, it's your perspective. It's what your understanding is of the business in a much broader but yet still in-depth sense. The chemistry between Warrior and Hulk wasn't there. They enjoyed each other. They respected each other. They got along together. There was no issues. It's just that those two people together didn't work. And that's it. There's no more, it's no more devious. It's not because Hulk Hogan wanted to bury the Warrior and get his win back. All these crazy, almost conspiratorial kind of, Dave Meltzer-ish angles that people come up with or reasons for, the things they don't like. It's fascinating. It's very creative, but it's not realistic and it's not true.
Well, speaking of, just as we're coming up to the end of the interview here, we've just 3 last questions, and then I'll let you go back to, then I'll let you go to the bar, get some vodka into you. But
it's still a little early here. It's only about 15 minutes after noon, so I think I'll wait a little on that.
It's Christmas. There's no such time as early. In 2002, when you joined WWE, and obviously people backstage prank each other just as friends, but did you ever feel like some of the pranks went a little too far, or did you think, it's just one of the boys?
I wish I would have been a part of and seen more practical jokes or ribs, as they're referred to in the industry. I never did. I heard about them, but it was never within, my proximity. I never witnessed them. I was never part of them. So I think some of the ones that I've heard about obviously went too far. Some of them pretty grotesque. Some of them are funny. Some of them nobody really gets hurt, only embarrassed, and those are okay. But, I think like anything else, sometimes things go too far, whether it's at a Christmas party or in a wrestling locker room.
Mm. Well, just as we come up to this final question, and I know you get asked about this a lot from the Q&A episode on 83 Weeks, and even last week when my friend Joe Feeney interviewed you. But why do you think that certain people, such as yourself or Bruce Pritchard, get shy about talking about being inducted into the Hall of Fame?
I think it's, well, I can't speak for Bruce. I can only speak for myself. It's two reasons. The first one is I don't know how I feel about it. A big part of me feels like, if I'm sitting down just talking to myself, feels like the Hall of Fame should be for wrestlers, not for people like me. I'm a peripheral character. And while an important part, I guess, from a creative storytelling point of view. I didn't sacrifice my life for the wrestling business. Meaning I didn't start at a very early age and go to, 8 or 10 shows a week, living in my car, living on almost no money, dealing with injuries, and doing that for 10 or 15 or 20 years until I finally got my break. Most of the wrestlers that are in the Hall of Fame have traveled that road, and I admire the hell out of them for it. But I don't see myself in that same category, because that's not how that wasn't my journey. My journey was difficult in its own way. My journey was challenging in its own way, but not in the same way that a true wrestling performer's is. So it's just awkward for me to think about it for that reason. And the other reason is, who the hell wants to, vote for themselves? It's just an awkward, uncomfortable thing for me. And I maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe it's my quirk, but it is.
Well, from my perspective, you 100% deserve it, Eric. You're a genuine legend in the business. And as I let you go, I just want to say happy Christmas to you and your family, and say hello to Eric Bischoff for me, because I thought he was great in TNA.
I certainly will do that. He'll be happy to hear that. And you have a happy Christmas yourself, and sir, be careful with those vodkas, my friend. They can sneak up on you.
Oh no, whiskey from now on. Don't worry.
All right. Take care.
Thanks so much, Eric. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, what a way to go out. And I want to say thanks to Eric Bischoff. I want to say thanks to Mark Norman. I want to say thanks to Paul. Also want to say thanks to Bruce Pritchard, Vince Russo, Joe Feeney, David Radigan, John Wangland, Jim Florentine, Gina Grad. I know I'm missing people. Conrad Thompson, there's one. I know I'm missing a lot of people out who've come on. Brad Gilmore, I forgot about Brad Gilmore. So thank you. And this is the last podcast we're ever going to do in 2018, and we'll see you early next year, or maybe even next week in case I change my mind. Haha, I'm hilarious. I'm pretty much the real life Joker. It's Hughezy. Merry Christmas. Bye bye. And for a little iTunes special, the good friend of the show, Joe Cumia, did a hilarious cover version of Baby It's Cold Outside. If you click on the audio version of the podcast, that is where you will see it. And by see it, I mean hear it. Forgive me, I'm very stupid. So really, it's Hughezy. Merry Christmas. Bye bye.